So, in this video, I'll start back from the last part of the meeting we just finished. So, Virgil was born in northern Italy and is considered the second Homer for the greatness of his epic poem. Was patronized by the first emperor of Rome, Augustus, through his collaborator Maecenas. He wrote two, the Egloges and the Georgics. So in the Egloges, he idealized country people versus city dwellers. And in the Georgics, he made a contrast in between the gaudy life of city dwellers versus the simple life of countryside and of countrymen. So, the Aeneid, it's a national epic poem for the Romans, had a propaganda value to further the rise of the new emperor Augustus. So, it's the story of Aeneas and his son Iulus. And to justify the wars, the future wars in between Rome and Carthage, future for the Aeneid, but they are in the past according to the time in which Virgil is writing, is the love affair with Dido, the queen of Carthage. Then the Aeneid is presenting the great ancestors of Rome, including gods, for example, Venus, to arrive to Emperor Augustus. Then is immortalizing the beautiful poetry, and is divided, as we said, in two halves. So one to resemble the Odyssey of Homer, the other one to resemble the Iliad of Homer too. The main theme is Rome's faith and destiny. So Virgil wanted to burn the book at his death. We will see why. So Virgil's poetry became greatly admired by the Romans with his great poem and famous poem, the Aeneid, the national epic poem of the Romans, and is still regarded as a masterpiece today. But this was regarded as a masterpiece by the great poets of the past too, including Dante, Alighieri, that in his Divine Comedy chose Virgil as his guide and travels through the underworld, through hell to the gates of heaven. So let's do parallels in between and comparison in between Virgil's Aeneid and Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. When writing the Aeneid, Virgil drew from his studies on the Homeric epics, and this because he needed help to create a national epic poem for the Roman people. So Virgil used several characteristics associated with epic poetry, so coming from his studies. So specifically from Homer's epics, he started to use the verse of epic poems, so the hexameter, then the division in books, a list of genealogies, and Virgil is underlying themes to draw parallels between the Romans and their cultural predecessors, the Greeks. So the Aeneid has a stamp of authenticity because it was conceived in the form of a written document by Virgil. And being him a well-educated writer of the 1st century BCE, then he was counting amongst his friends some of the most famous Roman citizens of his time, including the Emperor Augustus. So he promised to Augustus he would write an epic poem tracing Augustus' Roman lineage back to the ancient heroes and gods of the past, an epic to match the Iliad in stature and to establish Roman roots in the classical tradition. So, the Aeneid had a great success. And so Virgil is said to have, as we said during the meeting, to have recited books 2, 4, and 6 to Augustus. And in book 6, he mentioned Marcellus. So, the son of Octavia, Augustus' sister, and so making her to faint. But the poem was unfinished when Virgil died in 19 BCE. Though Virgil died before he had completed the Aeneid, his work was quickly published and immortalized by the Romans. So Emperor Augustus dedicated to his nephew Marcellus the theater in Rome began by Julius Caesar, and he dedicated to him in 13 BCE. The theater of Marcellus is very famous because it's the only extant Roman theater in Rome. So, the Aeneid was written in a time of major political and social change in Rome. So, to give an historical context to the Aeneid, to the writing of the Aeneid. So, was the time when the Republic fell, and so the final war of the Roman Republic had turned through the society, and many Romans' faith in the greatness of Rome was severely faltering. So, however, the new Emperor Augustus Caesar began to institute a new era, the new era of the emperors, but especially in his long rule of 40 years, a new era of prosperity and peace after the turmoil of the civil wars at the end of the Republic. So, specifically through the reintroduction of traditional Roman moral values, and the Aeneid was seen as reflecting this aim by depicting the heroic Aeneas as a man devoted and loyal to his country and its prominence, rather than his own personal gains. So I posted a video on Roman history, so you can see this very difficult passage from Republic to Empire and the time of Augustus. In addition, the Aeneid gives mythic legitimation to the rule of Julius Caesar first, and by extension to his adopted son Augustus. By immortalizing the tradition that renamed Aeneas' son Ascanius, called Ilus from Ilium, meaning Troy, Iulus, thus making him an ancestor of the gens Iulia, the family of Julius Caesar, and many other great imperial descendants, a part of the prophecy given to Aeneas in the underworld. Julius Caesar, Augustus, and all the family following. Then, even if the nature of the Aeneid was polished and complex, for example, there's a legend stating that Virgil wrote only 3 lines of the poem each day, the number of half-complete lines and the abrupt ending are generally seen as an evidence that Virgil died before he could finish the work. Because this poem was composed and preserved in writing rather than orally, as mostly the Homeric poems, the Aeneid is more complete than most classical epics. So Virgil, fearing that he would die before he had properly revised the poem, gave instruction to friends, including Augustus, that the Aeneid should be burned, as we said before, upon his death. Owing to its unfinished state, and because he had come to dislike one of the sequences in Book 8, in which Venus and Vulcan have sexual intercourse, and so this was not in conformity to Roman moral virtues. But the friends did not comply with Virgil's wishes, and Augustus himself ordered that they had to be disregarded. So, after minor modification, the Aeneid was published. So the structure of the Aeneid, like other classical epics, is written in hexameters. Each line consists of 6 metrical feet made up of dactyls and spondees. And the epic so consists, as we said, in 12 books, divided into halves, and so the narrative is broken up into 3 sections of 4 books each, respectively addressing Dido, the Trojans' arrival in Italy, and the war with the Latins. Each book has about 1,000 lines. So the Aeneid comes to a very abrupt ending. That's why scholars are saying that Virgil died before he could finish the poem. So in this structure, you can see the Greek and Roman national epics. So you can see the red, the Great Patriotic War, the Iliad, 24 books, and the Struggle to Journey Home, the Odyssey, 24 books. Then we can see that the Aeneid starts to struggle to journey home, so from Troy to Italy, from book 1 to 6, and then the second part, the Great Patriotic War, resembling the Iliad, books 7 to 12. Okay, so the last thing is to see which characters from Homer's poems are relevant to the Aeneid. For example, Ulysses, Odysseus in Homer, and the hero of the Odyssey, one of the captains of the Greek army during the Trojan War. Ulysses, like Aeneas, must make a long and treacherous voyage before he finds home again, and references to his whereabouts in the Aeneid help situate Aeneas' wanderings in relation to Ulysses. Then, Hector, that's the greatest of the Trojan warriors, killed at Troy. Hector is in some ways a parallel figure to Turnus, as we have said, who also defends his native city to death. The great warrior, seeing before the destiny of his city than his life. So honor, regarding more his honor than his life. Andromache, Hector's wife, who survives the siege of Troy, and meeting Aeneas in his wanderings, and telling him her story and advising his course to Italy. Then Paris, the Trojan prince. So Paris is asked to judge which goddess is most beautiful. Do you remember? Venus, Juno, or Minerva? Aphrodite, Hera, or Athena? So Venus promises him Helen. So Paris selects Venus. This selection inspires the permanent wrath of Juno and Minerva against the Trojans. So Paris is relevant in this sense to the Aeneid too. Then the king of Troy is slain before Aeneas' eyes during the Greek sacking of Troy, and is Pyrrhus, the son of Achilles, that appears in Aeneas' account of the siege of Troy as the brutal murderer of Priam and Priam's sons. So, this is the end of this part. The next videos will be on book 1, 4 and 12. Ciao ragazzi!